Okay, today we're going to learn how to read and write SAS files. Okay, so in terms of reading in, I'm going to read in a text file or either a Excel file. And for writing up the SAS file, I'm going to write up a SAS file. So I'm not going to write a text file or an Excel file because this is being a SAS column. I'm going to just write a SAS file. Okay, the first thing that we probably need to do is that if I were to read in some data, I want to make sure that that data is correctly located. So I do have a C and SAS directory, which is this directory right here. Okay, it seems that I do have a task2 data right there as located. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is that reading in the data in SAS is fairly simple. You have a data step and you're going to call it as an in file. You have a directory that is locating the text file. And for this case, I'm going to use a delimiter as comma because that's the comma that has been used. Okay, so if I were to run this data step and second I'm going to proc print it, so I'm going to call it procedure, and just to make sure that I have task2 data that is imported into SAS. Okay, so I'm going to run this two-part of code and it's running, and yes, it seems that SAS has correctly ran in my data step. Okay, so second step that I'm going to use is that I'm going to read in an Excel file. So reading in an Excel file is a little bit different from reading in a text file. You have to call a procedure called proc import, and you're going to have a data file, and this is the data file that it's the same data file, but I'm going to just have it as an Excel format. And I'm going to have an output called task2 -1 because it's a little bit different from the first one, and DBMS as XLSX because I'm referring to the Excel format of it, and I'm going to replace this name if there was a data called 2-1. Okay, so if I were to proc import this and run this code, and I'm going to probably print it again. Okay, so this is the value that I have gotten, and you notice that it is actually identical to the first one that we probably see, except for the differences that you probably don't have the column names, and that's because I put as get no names because this is the one that you specify if you don't want to read in the column names. Okay, so those are the two simple steps of reading a file. You probably noticed that a text file is done on a data step, and reading in an Excel file is using a procedure. Okay, now let's learn how to write a SAS file. So SAS file is a file that we call, and that is noted as SAS7BDAT. That's the SAS basic format file. In order to do that, what you have to have is you have to mount a library. So I'm going to mount a library name, call it dis, and that location would be CSAS. So if I go to the Explorer here, I do not have a library as of now called dis. So what I'm going to do is that if I run this, and now you probably notice that there's a active library that has been created, and now it's being called dis. Okay. Now writing is almost probably more easier than reading in a file. All you have to do is put a dis dot, and you have the data name. I'm going to just call it home run in this case. Okay, or because I do have a home run already, I believe. Okay, so yes, there is a home run data, so I'm going to call this home run 2. So it's just as simple as just have inputted in your data, and if I were to run this, and it's going to probably take a while, and if I go back to my SAS folder, now you probably notice that there's a home run 2 data that has been created. Okay, just to make sure that I do have that data at hand, what I'm going to do is probably call this data again and make sure that it is all there. And if I do a proc content, and let's see what happens. And yes, this is the proc content of the data that I have. Okay. So yes, this is how you would write SAS files, and just to make sure that you have the content all aligned and everything. This is, I just called a proc content, but you probably notice that the separate thing that you have to have is you have to mount a library here. That is a little bit different from some other files or some other software that you would do, but that's the step that you have to do for SAS. Okay, so in this session, we kind of look into how we could read text files and Excel files, and also write into SAS files, doing that all on SAS. Okay, all right, thanks.